Most people imagine that life collapses in a single great tragedy, an accident, a betrayal, a crisis so devastating that it shatters everything. But that's not how most men are defeated. No, the real downfall comes silently, through the small routines we never question. You wake up, you work, you spend, you repeat. The years slide past like sand through fingers, and when you finally look up, wealth and freedom are nowhere in sight. This is the brutality Machiavelli tried to warn us about. Fortune doesn't reward the average. It bends only to those who strike with boldness and relentless preparation. If you study every man who has risen to power, every woman who has seized extraordinary wealth, you find the same pattern: sacrifice. They bled for it, not always in the obvious sense, but in the steady erosion of comfort, of sentiment, of the small pleasures that keep ordinary people shackled. And here lies your choice. You can cling to comfort, polish mediocrity, and die as a spectator in the game of power. Or you can learn the exact sacrifices that separate those who command the game from those who are forever ruled by it. What follows is not motivational fluff. It is a ledger of costs. Most people will never dare to pay them, but if you are willing, these costs transform into bargains, temporary losses traded for permanent power. The first sacrifice is family. This is where people flinch. It sounds cruel, even heartless, but reality rarely aligns with sentiment. A child, as sacred as they are, demands your entire attention, as they should. Yet that attention diverts you from the ruthless focus wealth requires. Marriage in youth, before one's foundation is secured, binds you to duties that consume the very time and resources you cannot afford to lose. Even ties to parents and siblings, though holy and irreplaceable, come with obligations that can stall your ascent. Great men throughout history often postponed family until they had secured their place in the world. They delayed the comforts of kinship until they had built the fortress strong enough to protect them. This is not abandonment. It is deferred devotion. But make no mistake, it is still a sacrifice, and most will refuse it. The second sacrifice is health. Here we encounter a paradox. Health is essential. Without it, nothing else matters. Yet in the pursuit of wealth, health is often the first casualty. Machiavelli observed that men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their fortune. As disturbing as it sounds, it reflects a deeper truth. The human mind is wired to treat wealth as survival itself. Entrepreneurs push through exhaustion, nights stolen by insomnia as thoughts of opportunity and risk gnaw at their peace. Stress, fatigue, poor nourishment, all of these eat away at the body, while the fire of ambition burns hotter. Some later spend fortunes to reclaim the health they sacrificed. Others accept the damage as the invisible tax of greatness. The third sacrifice is friends. And this may hurt more than the others, because wealth narrows your circle. Once you may have been surrounded by laughter, by companions who filled the hours with comfort. But the path upward demands pruning. You must cut away those who do not push you forward. Toxic ties are obvious, but even companions content with mediocrity must fall away. The rich often keep fewer close friends, but those few are bonded by shared fire, equally ambitious, equally relentless. They are comrades in arms, not drinking buddies. Machiavelli warned rulers to avoid flatterers and instead keep only those who speak truth. In your climb, you will see the same principle unfold. Real allies sharpen your judgment. Everyone else is dead weight, and the pattern is already clear. To rise, you must trade comfort, security, sentiment. It is no accident that few succeed, because fortune always demands a ruthless payment, and most people are too tender to pay. The next sacrifice is hobbies. Leisure is the playground of the established. For those still climbing, it is poison disguised as pleasure. Golf, painting, collecting, endless diversions. Yes, they enrich the spirit, but they siphon away the energy, time, and resources that should be invested in building your freedom. Machiavelli warned that idleness breeds weakness, and idleness cloaked as hobby is still idleness. Until wealth is secured, your craft, your enterprise, your mission, these must become obsession. Hobbies will wait. Opportunities will not. Then comes the sacrifice of time itself. This is perhaps the most painful because it is the most absolute. 7 years, 10, sometimes more. That is the span required for financial sovereignty. These are not years filled with festivals and long evenings of delight. They are years at the desk, nights of negotiation, mornings rising before competitors even stir. These years may not be sweet, but they are seed years, the dark soil from which all future victories grow. Time will pass regardless. The question is whether you let it rot away or invest it so that each year compounds into power. Suffer for a few years or suffer for a lifetime. That is the fork in the road. Those who choose wisely feast later. Those who refuse beg forever. And then comes the sacrifice of happiness, or at least the easy version of it. Do not fool yourself. No one finds joy in 16-hour workdays, in solitude and relentless pressure. Even if you adore your work, there will be stretches where exhaustion strangles joy. Yet Machiavelli reminds us, men are driven more by necessity than by choice. Sacrificing temporary pleasure allows you to buy deeper forms of happiness later. The freedom to live without bills. The power to provide for family when the time is right. The dignity of never bowing to another's command. What you trade is not happiness itself, but its shallow counterfeit. The real joy waits beyond sacrifice. Sleep, too, becomes part of the offering. Elon Musk speaks of dancing on the edge of exhaustion. Ariana Huffington argues for the opposite. Who is right? Perhaps both. But the historical record is brutal. The wealthy have often stolen hours from the night to command hours of the day. Machiavelli himself wrote by candlelight after his daily duties, shaping works that still outlive us all. 6 hours of rest may be enough when weighed against the compounding weight of extra labor. Poor men sleep. Ambitious men rise before dawn. The decisive factor is not how little you sleep, but how ruthlessly you use the hours gained. By now, you can see the pattern crystallizing. Friends vanish, family waits, hobbies fade, happiness shrinks, and sleep diminishes. But this pruning is not loss, it is transformation. You are being stripped down, refined, like iron in fire. This is the crucible from which new men are forged. And as you will soon see, the next sacrifice is not something external. It is not friends, or time, or sleep. It is you. The sacrifice of self is where the game shifts from external to internal. Up until now, the sacrifices have been visible. Family, health, friends, time. Painful, yes, but still things you can point to outside yourself. The real crucible begins when you must surrender not possessions, not hours, but the very person you are today. Because who you are right now has produced your current reality. And if that reality is not one of power and wealth, then it means your present self is not equipped to climb further. The identity you carry, the habits, the comforts, the false virtues, has to be dismantled. Machiavelli warned that the man who insists on living entirely according to his professed virtues will meet only with ruin. Why? Because the world is not designed for purity. It is designed for adaptability. The self you cling to, the one that prides itself on comfort, on righteousness, on staying true to outdated routines, is the very anchor that will keep you from rising. To become wealthy, you must shed your skin. You must treat yourself as a manuscript, rewritten daily. Discipline becomes the ink, repetition the grammar, sacrifice the story itself. The undisciplined man remains trapped in mediocrity because he keeps rereading yesterday's draft. The disciplined man rewrites until he masters the script. This is not self-improvement in the casual sense. It is self-destruction with purpose. Every part of you that clings to ease must be burned away. And when it is gone, what remains is a version of you the old self would not even recognize. That is the point. Entertainment becomes the next offering on the altar. Hours lost to television, endless scrolling through social media, passive consumption of video games or sports. These are not neutral pastimes. They are narcotics for the spirit, engineered to pacify ambition. Unless you are paid to perform, broadcast, or create in these arenas, you have no business indulging as a consumer. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear occupied with matters of state at all times, lest they be judged idle and weak. In the same way, you must embody occupation with your mission. Half efforts are invisible to fortune. Those who dabble fail. Then there is stability, the illusion most people cling to as if it were oxygen. Wealth is not built on a steady, predictable path. It is born from volatility, risk, uncertainty, the chaos of ventures that fail and break before one finally explodes into triumph. You will endure long stretches of doubt, moments when everything seems to collapse, periods where risk swallows your comfort whole. And this is precisely the price. Machiavelli said it plainly. Fortune favors boldness, for fortune is like a woman who must be mastered through audacity. The rich gamble while the poor cling to security. If your environment locks you in stagnation, you must leave, even if it means abandoning everything familiar. No man achieves extraordinary results while clinging to ordinary safety. The next sacrifice is income itself. And here, the trap is subtle. Most sabotage themselves not by failing to earn, but by spending too soon. They taste a small victory, a promotion, a windfall, a profitable month, and immediately rush to display it through extravagance. A new car, a flashy watch, a lifestyle to match the image of success. But that is precisely what kills compounding growth. The wise reinvest. Every dollar becomes a soldier, sent back into battle to bring reinforcements. To celebrate early is to desert the battlefield while the war still rages. The rich live frugally in the climb, then feast when the fortress is secured. Those who flaunt too soon remain beggars forever, trapped at the gates of real power. Comfort itself must also be sacrificed. The new phone, the large apartment, the expensive meals, these are not progress. They are shackles disguised as luxury. Machiavelli observed that men judge more by appearances than reality. The poor man, desperate to be judged as rich, buys illusions. The powerful endure their ramen years, living on the bare minimum, surviving in humble quarters, wearing modest clothes, while channeling every resource into the machine of growth. The poor stay poor because they act rich. The rich become richer because they act poor. Comfort is a chain. To break it, you must embrace hardship now. so that luxury later is owned on your terms, not borrowed, not begged, not handed to you in scraps. At this point, the sacrifices have reshaped you. You have surrendered family for a time, strained your health, cut friendships, burned leisure, carved away stability, rejected early income, abandoned comfort, and dismantled your very identity. You are stripped raw. But this is only the outer battlefield, because the most lethal enemies remain inside. The hunger for approval, the poison of pride, the seduction of immediate gratification. These are not material obstacles. They are psychological traps, written into the very code of human nature. And unless you conquer them, no amount of discipline will matter. The need for approval must die first. Most people live enslaved to the opinions of others, parents, peers, friends, even strangers. Every decision weighed against the fear of rejection. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. In the pursuit of wealth, being agreeable often means you have traded your future for someone else's comfort. Success does not come to those who waste their energy pleasing others. It comes to those who stand immovable in their vision, even if it makes them disliked, even if it isolates them. This does not require cruelty, but it does require indifference to approval. Some will admire you, others will resent you, but all will respect you when you win. Next comes pride, the most camouflaged enemy of all. Too proud to start small, too proud to serve while building, too proud to endure humiliation in the early climb. Pride whispers that you are above the grind, that your dignity is worth more than patience. But Machiavelli noted that rulers are judged by outcomes, not by appearances along the way. The world will not care that you delivered pizzas while funding your startup, or scrubbed floors while drafting your empire. They will only care that you arrived victorious. Pride kills more dreams than failure ever did. To sacrifice pride is to embrace the humility of strategy, the understanding that the path matters less than the result. And finally, the sacrifice of immediate desires. This one is perhaps the hardest because it cuts against human wiring itself. Our brains are designed for instant gratification, the dopamine spike of spending, the thrill of indulgence, the comfort of celebration. These are traps laid deep in our psychology. You will be tempted to treat small victories as final triumphs, to trade compounding growth for the sweetness of now. But this is the dividing line between the wealthy and the poor. The poor man spends what he earns. The wealthy man delays, allowing resources to multiply. Every decision becomes a test, the empire of later or the pleasure of now. Machiavelli wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. The first man you must command is yourself." By now, the full weight of sacrifice should be settling on you. Family postponed, health strained, friendships cut, time consumed, pleasures reduced, stability shaken, comfort abandoned, approval dismissed, pride shattered, desires restrained. And yet, this is not punishment. It is exchange. Years of discipline traded for decades of freedom. Temporary deprivation for permanent power. You may already feel the heaviness of this list. It is overwhelming to imagine surrendering so much. Family, health, stability, friends, comfort, even your very identity. And yet, history shows us that those who truly rise have walked this crucible. The question is not whether the sacrifices are brutal. The question is whether they are worth it. Most will say no. And this is why most remain where they are. They disguise their unwillingness as morality, claiming they value family too much or choose balance. But beneath these noble-sounding excuses lies something more primal: fear. Fear of pain, fear of loss, fear of uncertainty. Human beings are wired for survival, not greatness. Neuroscience tells us that the brain prefers the predictable pain of mediocrity over the unpredictable agony of risk. We cling to the known, even when it is suffocating us. This is why Machiavelli insisted that fortune does not bend to the average. Fortune is chaos embodied. It must be seized with audacity, not requested politely. The average man prays for luck. The ambitious man demands it with sacrifice. But let us look deeper into the psychology of this. The sacrifices we've outlined are not arbitrary. They target precisely the biases that keep people trapped. Family ties reinforce conformity through social obligation. Health, when idolized, tempts people into complacency. At least I'm living well, even if I achieve nothing. Friendships seduce us with social validation, feeding our craving to be liked. Hobbies, comfort, stability, each one is a balm to our fear of emptiness. And pride, that deadliest of illusions, shields us from the humility required to start small. Every sacrifice cuts at a bias. Every sacrifice dismantles the psychological cage. You are not just paying costs in the external world. You are rewiring the internal machinery that keeps you ordinary. And this is why so few endure. Because the sacrifices feel like death. And in a way, they are. They are micro-deaths. The death of the old self. The death of small pleasures. The death of shallow validation. But from these deaths comes a rebirth. A version of yourself capable of commanding fortune rather than begging for it. Let us push further. What happens if you refuse the sacrifices? What does the path of comfort really look like? Imagine a man who chooses family early, indulges hobbies, protects his health obsessively, surrounds himself with easy friendships, spends income the moment it arrives, and guards his stability like a treasure chest. He appears happy. For a while, he may even feel happy. But the years pass. His freedom never arrives. His family depends on him, but he lacks the fortress to protect them. His hobbies become escapes from a life he secretly resents. His comfort becomes a cage. And when he is old, regret is the only wealth left to him. Contrast this with the man who endures the crucible. 10 years of sacrifice. 10 years of lean meals, sleepless nights, humble living, rejection of approval, command of desires. He too suffers. But his suffering is not endless. It is invested. Like seed in the soil, it grows unseen, until one day it bursts forth in abundance. Then he enjoys family fully, without the shadow of financial chains. He indulges in hobbies without guilt, knowing they do not weaken but enrich a fortress already built. He buys comfort not as illusion, but as reality, earned and unshakable. His happiness is not borrowed, it is sovereign. This is the hidden bargain. The weak see only loss. The strong see delayed freedom. And the delay is everything. But there is one more layer, one that cuts deeper than sacrifice itself. Sacrifice is not simply about giving things up. Sacrifice is about exchange. And to understand this fully, you must see the world through a Machiavellian lens. Men are not judged by their intentions. They are judged by their outcomes. No one cares if you meant to be great. No one cares if you almost made it. In history, only those who succeed are remembered, and their sacrifices, however cruel, however extreme, are retroactively sanctified as necessary. The failures, who refuse the cost, vanish nameless. This is why your sacrifices must not be scattered or half-hearted. To dabble in sacrifice is to guarantee mediocrity. You must commit as though fortune herself is watching, testing whether you are worthy of her favor. Think of it like this. Fortune is not neutral. Fortune is not a passive force waiting to be harnessed. Fortune is resistance itself, the weight against which you must push to grow stronger. And like weight, she demands intensity. Lift halfway, and you gain nothing. Lift fully, repeatedly, painfully, and you are reshaped. That reshaping is not just physical or financial, it is psychological. Modern psychology calls it identity shift. When you consistently sacrifice and endure, your brain rewires itself. Neural pathways adapt, habits solidify, dopamine recalibrates. The very pleasures that once seduced you lose their grip. A night of television feels unbearable. Approval from the mediocre feels empty. Indulgence in early comfort feels like poison. You literally become a new man, one who finds joy not in ease, but in conquest. This is the transformation Machiavelli hinted at. Power belongs not to the virtuous, nor the lucky, nor the comfortable, but to those who have paid with their own skin. And here we arrive at the most dangerous insight of all. The sacrifices do not end. They evolve. Even when wealth is secured, fortune demands vigilance. Comfort tempts you again, friends return, pride whispers louder, desires multiply. The game never truly ends, which means the real mastery is not just in sacrificing, but in learning to live as one perpetually willing to sacrifice. A man who cannot be seduced by ease, a ruler not only of wealth, but of himself. When you grasp this, you see the world differently. You stop envying the rich man's mansion because you know the years of invisibility that built it. You stop resenting the powerful because you understand the crucible that forged them. And you stop excusing your own mediocrity because you see clearly it was never fate. It was never bad luck. It was simply the refusal to pay the cost. So ask yourself, how much of you are you willing to burn away? How deep will you let the fire cut? For only in that furnace is freedom born. If you've stayed with me this far, you've already proven something most will never prove. You've endured the discomfort of even listening to the costs. Many clicked away after the first mention of family, or health, or the idea that friends must be cut. They recoiled because truth unsettles. But you are still here, and that reveals something critical. Your mind has the capacity to confront reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. That is the first step toward fortune. Now comes the decision. Will you remain a spectator, applauding the victories of others while rationalizing your own mediocrity? Or will you pay the cost fortune demands and join the few who rule the game? The ledger of sacrifice is clear. Family postponed, health strained, friendships severed, time consumed, pleasures reduced, stability shaken, comfort abandoned, approval dismissed, pride shattered, desires restrained, and ultimately the self dismantled and remade. This list is not inspiration. It is indictment. It is the reason 99% of men remain ordinary, because the price feels unbearable. Yet the irony is this: the price of mediocrity is far heavier. A lifetime of quiet desperation, of compromised dreams, of regrets carried to the grave. You cannot escape sacrifice. You only choose which kind you will endure. Temporary pain for lasting freedom, or lifelong pain disguised as comfort. Philosophy reminds us that suffering is not optional. It is the currency of existence. What is optional is what you purchase with it. You can spend your suffering on stagnation, or you can invest it in transformation. One buys nothing. The other buys sovereignty. Psychology also tells us something dangerous. The human brain is addicted to shortcuts. Dopamine rewards the small, now, instead of the big, later. That's why people scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, indulge endlessly. Because the brain tricks them into thinking these little pleasures equal happiness. But neuroscience also shows us that delayed gratification reshapes reward pathways. The more you resist the now, the more your brain learns to hunger for the later. Discipline is not just a moral choice. It is neurological warfare against your own wiring. Every sacrifice strengthens new circuits until you no longer crave distraction. You crave conquest. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, though in different language. He wrote that rulers are judged only by the outcome, not by the means. In other words, the world does not care if your climb was graceful, if your path was balanced, or if your sacrifices looked harsh. The world remembers only the result. Did you rise, or did you remain forgotten? And so, we return to the final truth. These sacrifices are not permanent. They are trades. You do not abandon family forever. You postpone so that when you return with power. You do not destroy health forever. You temporarily strain it, then buy it back with resources most men will never taste. You do not lose friends forever. You trade many shallow companions for a few comrades who sharpen your edge. You do not give up happiness forever. You surrender shallow pleasures to buy a deeper, sovereign joy. Years of discipline for decades of freedom. That is the exchange. That is the hidden bargain. Most will never dare to enter this bargain. They will spend their lives making peace with what if. They will blame luck, fate, or corruption. But their mediocrity will not come from fortune's cruelty. It will come from their own refusal to pay the cost. If you have listened to the end, then you are not among the weak. You are already rare. Most abandoned this lesson long ago, but you have endured, which means you are capable of embracing what others fear. So now, the choice stands before you, naked and undeniable. Will you walk away, returning to comfort, excuses, and the safety of mediocrity? Or will you strip hesitation from your bones and join the few who rule the game? If you choose the second path, then this is only the beginning. Subscribe. Join this community. Together, we will build the fortress of wealth and power, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, until fortune herself has no choice but to bow. In a world where hesitation is defeat, commitment becomes your greatest weapon.